There was a certain time, like checkpoint in my life where I was like, oh, wait, I'm allowed to enjoy this?
Right.
Like, it doesn't
I
have
don't
to
have
just
to
taste
breathe this
horrible.
down and
Because the first thing I ever drank was a 40. It was just a 40-ounce malt liquor, like some, whatever that name brand Irish malt liquor was at the time.
yeah,
And you can buy them for like
hell
80
yeah.
cents for like 2 liters. And I ended up, it was so bad,
Oh.
so terrible. And unless it's ice cold, it's nearly impossible to choke down.
Oh my
Like- All right. Welcome to the Millennial Experience podcast. I am Luke Adamson.
And I am Eddie Ambries.
So we were just talking about how these days,
You have a lot of popular flavored alcoholic beverages. And one thing I noticed is that I'm going to say in the span of just like a decade,
it went from
yeah.
it's manly to drink beer and straight scotch, and you're not supposed to enjoy it because then you're not a man.
Exactly.
To now,
do like-
now it's okay to drink White Claws and
Right.
Mike's Hard Lemonade.
Mango
and
this, guava that, which I totally agree with, is totally fine. I think one of the great things about being human is that we don't have to restrict ourselves to the rules that we think exist.
Yeah.
We can actually enjoy ourselves and make things like really like diverse. Come on, like I always thought that was sort of one of those weird reinforced attitudes where you're right. It's like you have to have this nasty beer, otherwise your drunkenness doesn't count. Or something.
It's not good. It's the wrong kind of drunk. It's the. I wonder where that came from. If it started with, where do you think down the road of drinking alcohol it became a manly thing to kind of drink the stuff that's more, it's harder to drink, like
malt
liquor, like
I think
moonshine?
I think it definitely comes from that history of for example, in media, where do you normally see those big mugs of malt get drinking? What is the context of this?
It's like men
It's like sometimes it's in
bar.
past centuries in a castle, like victory, do you know what I'm saying, like success and stuff, celebration. I don't know where you would have gotten the masculine attitude, because if you would have asked me how I felt about how the media was portraying alcohol, mostly for me it was either you were getting drunk with it or you were celebrating something with it. And I felt like, I think that was a distinguishing factor of its use for me growing up. Like, what are you using it for? To just like get wasted? Or are you with your friends and you're together and you're celebrating?
That's the manly aspect of it, is like, this is to get me drunk. And I don't need it to taste good. I just need it to do the trick and get me wasted really fast. It's funny because then there's cultures that have always drank wine. I wonder if even wine within itself, because now wine in and of itself has kind of like a manly wine and a like more feminine wine. Like the men drink like the hard, like rich, dark Cabernets and stuff, and then women will drink like the Rieslings and the.
For me, I think probably influenced from my Christian upbringing, my J-dub upbringing, that wine was a sort of a class thing, where from the Bible, it was pretty commonly used when you read, wine.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now you have cheap wine and good wine, but for me, it always seemed like, well, wine is something you do when you're at a higher level, and that's what you quote unquote get drunk with, wine rather than beers. And maybe that was media also kind of doing that with classes, because that's kind of what it was. It is definitely a stereotype. It feels like one.
I mean,
it feels like one when I think of it.
Yeah, and how come wine has this whole range of like this same amount, this this 12 ounces of wine costs $4, but this 12 ounces of wine
costs $1,000,
also made from grapes, costs like $1,500.
Right.
What is that? Is it the type of grapes that they grew?
I thought regionally, I think there's certain grapes that have a fame, and I think that's because you have a wine that's sort of been grandfathered into the history of wine. And so now you can trace back its grapes to some region. And so grapes from that region, I guess, are particularly special. But I think you're right. It's grapes. And if there's going to be anything more expensive about one than the other, it's got to be something that's just that expensive. And I would say time spent in a barrel somewhere, if that's what's going to make it cost more. Otherwise, I really think maybe it's just a scam.
Arbitrary. Yeah.
Yeah, generally. Maybe not mostly, but generally, because
it's like name brand clothing that is made like two companies make the same exact two brands. Or you know how like for instance, I heard somewhere that some of the engines that they use in some of the fancier cars, the sister companies of those
use the same engine,
and they just put a different shell on the car, and then it's like 15 times as expensive. I wonder
that
if
makes sense, because I think
wine.
what they try to make you think is more expensive is the gadgets inside that they put inside, which is something that's definitely cheaper than putting a more expensive engine.
And you're like paying for the notoriety of like, oh, I have a Lexus and you have a Honda, so I'm better than you, even though that's not necessarily.
That's true. Primates these days, we tend to do that. We like the shiny rock rather than the black one, even though neither can really feed us or clothe us or anything.
They do the same thing.
Exactly.
Oh, types of wine. Is it true that like Cabernet is a type of grape, and a Pinot Noir is a type of grape, and a Sauvignon Blanc is a type of grape?
I'm gonna assume so, because I don't know. I don't know how the rules are. I can't navigate a label on a bottle of wine. Yeah, I think that's a good way to explain that. I can just drink it.
I just know it gets me drunk. I've thought about making beer and wine.
Oh, cool.
I think I was telling you about that.
Yeah.
Because I ferment a lot of food and kombucha and stuff, so it's the same basic concept.
Right.
Like you're just
different ingredients.
You're using wheat and
do you have to do changes in temperature and pressure of how you do it all?
I'll be able to talk more on this once I do it.
Okay, word.
My understanding is it's a little more complex than most fermentation, because there's multiple, like you have to get a few different types of grains and like make sure they're cracked and like the right type of fermentation grains, and then you have to have hops. You have to have this like wheat starter stuff, and it is a little more labor intensive. Like you've got to be there at 10 minutes into the batch. You've got to stir it.
You got to do the thing, and then you got to wait this long, and then
you have to ferment it for a certain amount of time and have this special like gas release top on it that's like letting the gas out while it's fermenting so it doesn't explode. And then you have to have like this siphon that funnels it back out into the bottles. But it would be so cool just that finished product of like,
to try it
like
out.
It is with my kombucha. It's like, it's something I've crafted, and I'm slowly narrowing down the flavors that I like. It's
definitely way better when if
you had your own beer that was like this, no one else in the world can drink this beer because I have handcrafted this just to be exactly how I like the flavor profiles to be.
That's cool.
Be rewarding.
I wonder how many tries that takes when you are like, okay, this is perfect, I'm sure the first 3 tries you probably make a lot of progress to what if you know what direction to go as far as your ingredients.
Yeah, and it changes over time. Like it makes you wonder about Budweiser, like and the companies going way far back that like came up with these specific flavor profiles and the way they do it. How long it took.
When
them
I think
to
of
get
Budweiser
to where
now, I'm like, yo, I've had so many better beers.
Yeah.
Than what Budweiser is.
Bud Light.
And like that's where I say that some get grandfathered in. They're probably really just they were just kind of one of the first ones. There's not.
You just know what you're gonna get.
Yeah. I like you know. Do you remember when we went to the Blues and Brews?
Mm-hmm.
And the year where they had the little recycle cups, so we kept going back with the little cups. Now, I had good beers before then, but having all of those stations there for me to have been able to hit every single one, I think that was probably my really first good introduction to the difference of beers.
Yeah.
And appreciating the flavor of it.
Yeah,
because I could have a small amount of them within a certain amount of time that my memory could compare them all, versus you kind of going to a bar and you kind of stick with the one drink you started with a lot of the times.
Yeah.
If it's just a casual outing, it's not like you're gonna go like, all right, I'm gonna try a new beer. Now the second one, it's gonna be a different beer. The third one, it's gonna be a different beer. Although that sounds like a good idea now that I think about it, sitting here.
Got to start doing that.
Yeah, I got to start doing that. But yeah, that was my very first introduction when I think about that. So yeah, when I think about what you're saying, like, you know, getting all the flavors right and stuff, I'm like, that's true, because then you can really think about how you really want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
So like I don't know did you try the prickly pear one? I don't know if you remember. It was called Otra Vez.
I think so. Yeah.
That means again. Oh,
one more time.
One more time. And I don't know if you remember that one, but like if you've ever had prickly pear cactus as a food, it was like, all right, that's clever how they put the prickly pear in this.
It like
it was
well
very
with
good.
the beer.
Yes, it was very good. Very good. Yeah. So that's exciting because you won't be limited now.
Yeah.
To
if you're like, I wish there was a beer like this.
Exactly.
You can just make it.
You can make it. Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm gonna give it a shot.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It'd be cool to learn how to make wine too, because you can do the same thing.
Right.
Like whatever. If we're right in assuming that each of those types of grapes is like a different.
I wonder
wine.
if there's artificial fermentation that makes some wine cheaper than others, where it's like the fermentation is literally real time. But I don't know enough about.
Well, yeah.
Manipulate that.
It's not something that you can really manipulate because what is happening is the bacteria in it
have to die.
They're eating the sugars and whatever's in it and spitting out carbon dioxide, which actually ferments it, which is just a time-consuming process. The only thing you can do to speed it up is to increase the temperature, but then it's really hard to get it right because it will start to mold really fast. It'll go bad. There's like when you use a cooler temperature, like a room temperature type fermentation, you have a bigger time frame for error. Like with the kombucha, if you accidentally let it go 3-4 days too long, it's just going to be a little more vinegary.
Okay.
But not horrible. Like you can still drink it. It'll be fine. But if you were to do that in like 90 degrees, it would ferment really, really fast. But that margin of error, if you let it go for, 3 hours too long, it could completely be ruined. So it's best to just like use a room temperature. And I think there's different temperatures for different types of fermentations and stuff, but the baseline easiest one is definitely just like room temperature.
So I'm like wondering, based on all the processes you mentioned, if it's possible that you can make those processes cheaper and thus produce a cheaper wine. But what about it? Do you skip out on and do shortcuts with, if in fact fermentation takes its time and you need a certain amount of
I think it's just ingredients. Like if you're getting your ingredients in bulk and getting cheaper ingredients, you're gonna end up bringing that overall cost down.
And maybe that's where the whole grape reputation comes into play there.
And that's what I wish I knew more about how to make wine, because it's not just grapes, right? It's not pure grapes that just fermented and that's what the wine is. Are they using sugar in it to help it ferment? Are they adding anything else? What kind of like filtration system are they using?
Is there any expensive science that takes place to make it particularly good? Yeah.
I bet they have like a Walter White lab set up And that's when it gets really expensive.
And the real good stuff is a burgundy, deep burgundy color.
You know it's good because it's burgundy.
That is great. That is great. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, but I think it's progressive to the way that the attitudes with alcohol have been moving. Because it's true. There was a sort of exclusionary way of thinking about it that way. And I always thought, isn't everyone just trying to have a good time? Who cares how you're consuming it?
Why can't you just enjoy a fruity beverage if it tastes really good?
And that's what made me start seeing that. And sometimes in like, you know, when you sort of start drinking somewhere, like maybe with the wrong people, it's like competitive almost at the beginning when you like start drinking.
Yeah.
And it's not until later on when you start hanging out with like only the people you like and drinking only with the people you like that you really get the nice, like the reason why it's nice to drink.
Yeah, there was a certain time, like checkpoint in my life where I was like, oh, wait, I'm allowed to enjoy this?
Right.
Like, it doesn't have to just taste horrible.
This down and
because the first thing I ever drank was a 40. It was just a 40-ounce malt liquor, like some, whatever that name brand Irish malt liquor was at the time.
Yeah,
and you can buy them for like 80 cents for like 2 liters. And I ended up, it was so bad, so terrible. And unless it's ice cold, it's nearly impossible to choke down.
Oh my God.
Like once it starts to get anywhere near room temperature, it's like you're just like drinking mud. Yeah, it's bad.
That's fucking disgusting.
And I thought that's just how it was, but then in time you find like these really creative craft beers that have all this flavor profile, and it gets really interesting. Right. It's like a hobby.
Yeah, and then you start to say like I like the dark beers or I like IPAs. Like you really start to get into it. But you're right. Like at the beginning, if you're at the beginning of drinking and that's kind of what your experience has been, what we've mentioned, like. You know, times have changed. You know, if people don't like the way you're drinking, don't drink with them. Looking, what the hell?
Yeah.
Stay away from those people. Like, it's truly like I would say it's a enjoyable human activity that can be done in regulation responsibly and have an amazing time.
Yeah.
And freaking avoid the hangover and the blackout. Oh my God, that's terrible. You can still experience it without that.
Yeah, no kidding. Like there's a really fine line there, and there's all different kinds of people that have different brain chemistries that make it harder. But let's take a quick break, and we'll get right back into that because I have something more to say about that. So, have you ever had any kind of issues with addiction when it comes to alcohol? Like, have you ever felt like worried, like, oh man, I'm getting kind of out of control?
I've never felt myself get into something that was a strong habit with alcohol because I was always aware that the carbs in alcohol was something I needed to be aware of with my blood sugar. And since I've been diabetic since I was 8, it's made me paranoid about what I put into my mouth since I was 8. Mm-hmm. And so, although there was like a couple of times where I may have drank too much, the only time I thought it was a problem was when I felt that my skin was getting ugly and I was like getting kind of fat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you attribute that directly to the
alcohol?
And
I think I attribute that to the lifestyle of it being, and I would say probably arguably acceptable in this society, drinking every weekend. Mm-hmm. And I think that was too much.
Just once a weekend or all weekend long?
No. Like on the weekend, like every weekend. And I mean, I don't know. When we lived at the other place, were we drinking more often there? Like every day?
I think so, yeah. Because we were just young and like off on our own for the first time. Right. And
so maybe
it was easy to just come home from work and have a couple beers.
Right. I think for me, it never got to the point where I needed to have one. I think it was sort of social. Because I don't know if if I ever felt like taking a shot or having, well, because we were jamming a lot, and the wine I didn't think of as like even a bad habit at all, because we really only thought about the wine when we were jamming or going out to like dinner, which was in itself its own thing. But now that I think about it, since we were doing all of that a lot, we were probably just drinking a lot too.
We probably were.
I just wasn't thinking about it as alcoholism because we weren't just sitting around and doing it. It was always within some activity.
Well, maybe that's just because we're more active people. Like, we're always doing something. There's not a lot of time where we just spent sitting around. But when we did, like, if we were just sitting there playing video games, I feel like oftentimes we were drinking a Dos Equis or something at the same time. But
that's true.
I don't know.
In that in particular, that's true. But yeah, but I don't know. I guess we would have to define.
Well, for me, for instance, there's definitely been phases in my life where I've been like, if I didn't, like, I start thinking about having a drink like partway through the workday.
Oh shoot!
And like, I'm already planning out when I get home, like I'm gonna start drinking and stuff. And it kind of started. Yeah, so it got to the point where I was like, oh man, I think I might have a problem. And it was hard for me, like on a day where I would have to be like, all right, I'm not going to have a drink tonight. I'm going to like knowingly not have a drink. And then even with that, sometimes I would end up being like, you know what, it's okay. I can just have like a couple drinks, no problem. And so there was a time where I went very recently, like years without having any alcohol, because I just needed that reset of like, wait a minute, I'm in control here. I don't have to drink.
Right.
And I could see it starting to get really expensive. Mm-hmm. It was starting to like be something I didn't feel in control of, and I really don't like that. So, but now I'm back to the point where I know myself well enough to know that if I want to have a drink here or there, as long as I just have a drink,
right,
then I'm okay. If I start to even get into that like second drink, at that point I've lost control and I know I need to stop altogether. But the thing is, I really enjoy like a really nice craft beer, and I really enjoy like a nice glass of wine for what it is, which is why I would want to learn how to make it. Right. But yeah, so I just, it's cool getting to that point now where I know I had a problem in the past, and I know a lot of people with serious like alcoholism can never have another sip for the rest of their lives because they know for a fact that they'll end up in a ditch half naked somewhere that night.
I think I can speak a little bit on feeling that I may have had a problem, but it would have been mostly for like, for example, the nights that I would like throw up, or the mornings that I would be just sick and hungover, were the times that I reflected to myself to make sure that I didn't have a problem. Mm-hmm. Because it's like such a high price to pay for a night that you probably don't remember. Mm-hmm. And it's just kind of dumb, don't you think? Like the trade-off is just kind of dumb. And so to me, that was the kind of things that was like, all right, like, don't do that. Your body obviously is saying no to it. It's obviously saying no to it. And so for me, I think you and I talked about it too. We had done that, like, it wasn't a pact, but it was like we were stopping at 3 drinks in a night. And that was it. And I think because we had such a bad hangover with fake Travis Barker or fake Tom DeLonge. Yeah. And it was really horrible. And I think it was after that we were like, okay, we just don't do stupid shit like that. Because that is fucking dumb.
And it was almost like this competition with yourself to see how much you can I keep drinking.
Up around? Yeah, can I keep going and stuff? And
like, what's the point? Exactly. Like, because it never ends up going well. It's always horrible.
I agree. 100%.
And the most fun, like To me, the most fun you can have is when you have like one drink, and then you kind of get that light feeling from the alcohol, but you don't ever get drunk. It's just like this very, very tiny little buzz, and then you don't end up feeling dehydrated. You don't end up having a hangover. You don't end up feeling like you've lost control and you start to act stupid. Like you're just enjoying it for what it is, and you're in complete control. So that's where I've gotten back to. But
I agree with you. I remember reading that it said that if you have about a drink per hour, it's a pretty good timer.
And like
yourself.
A bottle of water in between each one.
Yeah, and a bottle of water will help. And then but to always sort of like just keep that in mind, because remember at parties, in 1 hour, how much you can have to drink at a house party in 1 hour, especially those ones where they're having shots in the kitchen constantly. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And how quickly like you'll just and if you're not keeping track of yourself as you get older, and you realize, okay, I can't have fucking 8 shots in a night or 20 shots in a night. I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
I think so you start to back off and you start to regulate, and I think that's when you hit that sweet spot of enjoying a drink.
Yeah.
Not racing and freaking gulping this down and getting more and more faded, and my fucking vision's getting fucking fuzzy in my face.
You just end up making a complete fool out of yourself.
You get fucking overly emotional.
You're destroying your body. Destroying your skin.
And so like I for the sake of like understanding like enjoyment, again, for a night you're not going to remember, it's not worth how you're going to feel in the morning. And we should really think about why we accept that as a good trade-off, and make sure that we aren't drinking for bad reasons then. Because I can, freaking drinking responsibly, and it's never been better. I think my experience now, and I mostly only drink with my best friends. So for me, it's super normal now. I don't see it as dangerous to myself either. And like you, it's like, you have the control because you know how to use it, which is, I think,
and that I think that just came with brain development. Like when I was like 21 and 22 years old, my brain just wasn't fully developed yet. I didn't have that sense of wisdom of knowing, this is gonna mess my life up if I keep doing this, and if I don't want to have a hangover ever again. I don't want to wake up feeling like crap and like have to leave work because I'm like throwing up. Like I don't want to suffer through the day for 2 days after I go and just binge drink and then forget the entire night anyway. And there was just a point where that type of willpower set into my brain that I just didn't have before. And maybe it was because of so many experiences in a row of just feeling like shit and like being so messed up for days. That I'm able that brought me to that. But I also kind of just think I grew up and I just realized I didn't want to, the trade-off wasn't worth it.
Right. Yeah. Growing up with, I think whatever media portrayals I had as a child kept me away from alcohol well enough. And my parents weren't, they didn't set that example at all either for me either. They didn't drink. I don't think it was until all of their kids got older that they were a little bit more willing, because then you can sort of reason and logic rather than a child just picking up a pattern and then doing the same as you. But for me, there was always it may have been the religious upbringing too, but there was always that existing risk of any substance you took on, whether it was tobacco or alcohol. For me, in my head, there was always that inherent risk that, you do this, and in my head, you do this once, you're always gonna do it. And so maybe that, although irrational, maybe that fear was helpful in my youth, although it did not stop from bad hangovers and vomiting from happening later on. So maybe it is something you just gotta make sure that you have the right company. I'm hopeful for the younger generations, though, that they're a little bit more progressive about the flavor now. Like
because they're doing it to enjoy it
right.
rather than doing it to get wasted necessarily.
Which although
it might go hand in hand.
Yeah, it might go hand in hand. But
like that's something
attitude.
I was just thinking. It's like something I have now that I didn't before is like if I get to a party or a bar or something, and they don't have anything that I want to drink, I just won't drink because I'm just reinforcing to myself that it's a conscious decision. Like I will drink this IPA because I really enjoy this specific IPA and I like it a lot. But if there's only like Bud Light there and someone's like, here, we've got these, you want one? I'll be like, oh, I guess I'll drink this even though I hate it.
Because
I want to get wasted. No, I'm not doing that shit anymore.
That's true.
If they have like a really nice craft beer, like that just sounds interesting or delicious, I will try it for the sake of enjoying it, but I'm not going to drink ever again in order to get fucked up.
Right.
So
yeah, that always seemed like such a sort of counterintuitive thing to do, because you're right. Like, I think using the word competition in the context of in youthful drinking is appropriate in this case, because there was this sort of, can I keep this up all night attitude. And it's like, that shit is so fucking dangerous.
Yeah, because you can't.
So dangerous.
No one
You're
can.
not supposed to. Oh my Christ. But yeah, no. Which brings me back to that low tolerance attitude is the best one to have.
Yeah.
Low tolerance is the best tolerance.
It is. It's true. You should dream of being a lightweight. Like, that should be your goal.
Yeah, because it's less expensive and you can enjoy it and you can do it slow. Dude, that bloatedness of drinking fast. Oh,
yeah.
Gross, man.
Especially if you're like gluten sensitive or gluten intolerant.
All the freaking time. Like freaking feeling your way on the wall to the bathroom because you're so faded.
And people don't think about it like they do with food, because it's still calories. It's still
that's true.
It's still calories going into your body. And some of those IPAs and stuff, it's like eating a Big Mac every single drink you have. And people just don't take that into consideration. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely got to be something that you're doing consciously. You're doing in moderation and know your limits. If you have a problem with alcohol at all and you feel like you've lost control in any way, it's a very, very good idea to take a huge step back and really take a deep breath and realize what you have to do to save your life, basically.
Right. Super
important. So I'm very grateful that I didn't get completely pulled down into that mess, because I read a statistic somewhere that, and I'm not going to quote it exactly, so don't quote me on this, but it's something like 90% of people that become alcoholics end up dying from alcohol. Almost nobody recovers and gets clean.
From actually being an alcoholic?
Yeah, alcohol at some point, 90% of people that become alcoholics at some point in their life will die from alcohol. Like specifically from whether like liver complications or
being getting drunk from something.
Yeah, getting too drunk and dying. Like,
jeez.
So almost no one is able to do what I did and take a step back and go, okay, I can't go down this path because I know it's going to kill me. So I consider myself very, very grateful.
Or that it didn't last longer than it did. Because maybe some people try to get clean after 20 years of...
Yeah, and I heard sometimes if you drink for your whole life and then you stop drinking, that can end up killing you. Like the withdrawal. Massive change suddenly, like the withdrawals themselves can kill you. And I think smoking is the same. Like some people, if they smoke for 70 years and then they quit, like a lot of people die. I don't know exactly what's happening there medically. Maybe it takes
like a heavy stress on the body when it's already old.
Yeah. It's just a very big change to your body chemistry all of a sudden.
Like, geez, this change is insane. Yeah, that's insane, man. No, that's kind of sad because I believe the numbers of buying alcohol in the United States is there's more money spent on alcohol than on education, which speaks really badly to the attitude we're gonna have towards education when you can just drink away.
And that includes all the people spending tens of thousands of dollars a year on college degrees. Like there's still more people spending more money on alcohol than all of the education combined. That's amazing. But and yet it's completely legal,
right?
Which I think it should be. Like I think everything should be legal to an extent. Like people should have the freedom to make that decision for themselves with solid education around it. From
I think the justification of going through with any progressive ideas are really going to have to be underlined with education in that society first, and then you go.
Yeah.
Because otherwise...
Like the back of alcohol, I don't know if alcohol specifically does like on everything, but there should be big, massive warning labels that this is known to cause addiction in a ton of people. It could possibly kill you and destroy your life. Right. Here's how you avoid that. Or at least,
I wonder how people would feel about actual statistics being placed on the labels when it comes to addiction levels, alcoholism, or death numbers.
Don't they do that with I think on cigarettes in other countries?
There's a Surgeon General's warning, but I don't know if they I think on some they do pictures that look
I think it might be Australia or another country. I heard they on the box they put like pictures of people that have
throat cancer or something. Yeah.
I'm sure the companies hate that because it's the worst form of marketing you could ever do. But it's great from a scientific perspective and like a societal health perspective.
I think so too.
So I think they should do that with alcohol too. Like, this is what could happen. Mm-hmm. Here's how you avoid that. Mm-hmm. Like, don't drink to excess. Don't drink every day. Don't, have a drink here and there. Mm-hmm. Drink I guess people constantly say drink responsibly, but I don't think there's enough emphasis on what that means.
You're right.
Like, it's just a sentence people hear now.
I would say just check the reason that you're drinking, and hopefully it's not just to get drunk.
Yeah. And we've reached our time, so we're going to end it there. But thank you so much for listening, everybody. If you have any questions about, if you feel like you have some kind of questions about addiction, or if you're having a problem, definitely reach out to us. Let us know. I've been there, and I can help provide some advice. And definitely seek out help wherever you can. Drink responsibly.
Be safe, everybody.
Peace out.
Peace.